Good morning. Wow. Good morning and welcome back to the fall semester. This feels incredible. Today we're going through new technology, new setup, all of us together at one time. I couldn't ask for a better opening session to the fall semester. So thank you for being here this morning. A little bit about the event center that I wanted to share with you really quick are some of the features that I thought you might be interested to know about. So this is an 85,000 square foot facility, 2 levels, 2 basketball courts on the other side of the screen, competition options for competition basketball, volleyball tournaments, portable batting cages, bleachers, and seating to accommodate both athletic competitions, our graduation ceremonies, other large-scale events, athletic staff office spaces, and if you haven't checked out Wayne's, be sure to do that, presentation room, and conditioning space. So a little bit about the event center. When I came in here, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Our athletes are going to be so excited to see this, and I'm thinking, what team could I join? I could sign up and take a class and become an athlete. So I talked to Wayne. I reached out to Wayne and I said, what about basketball? Well, I was a little bit vertically challenged, so we thought that wouldn't work. And then I thought, well, what about softball? Well, then throwing the ball around a little bit, I found out that maybe my catching ability isn't where it needs to be. So then we talked about volleyball, not a spiker. Then I talked about our new wrestling program, and then when I looked at the uniform, I thought, unless we have really good Spanx, this is not gonna happen. So what we decided, for me, that would work is, beginning this fall, I will be the new mascot of Joliet Junior College. So now when you're at the events, if you see Wiley walking around, you'll never know who's inside. So we hosted our first commencement ceremony back in JJC's campus for the class of 2017 in our new event center. This was the first time in 6 years we were able to have everyone back together in the same space. So before I get into my presentation, I would like to invite our board chairman, Bob Wunderlich, to the podium to share some remarks on behalf of the board. So please join me in welcoming Chairman Bob Wunderlich.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Boy, this is great. How do you like this nice place here? It's wonderful. It's a good way, exciting way to kick off the fall semester here. As Judy said, I'm Bob Wunderlich. I'm the chairman of the Board of Trustees. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to welcome everyone here to kick off the fall semester. The college we have here has state-of-the-art facilities. We are innovators, and we are a key resource for a diverse and inclusive community of traditional students, non-traditional students, local businesses and organizations, and much more. We are the thing to do to your amazing contributions. Thank you for making JJC our first choice for the whole community and being the fantastic faculty and administrators that you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Wunderlich. So before, I know he has to head out this morning, but I really appreciate his time that he took to come in. But if you didn't know this, I would like to point out that Chairman Wunderlich has served as a JJC trustee for over 40 years. His dedication and passion for this college is truly unparalleled, and I can tell you as the president, I could not ask for a better board chair. He's been wonderful. So for those of you that were here at that time, and I know there are several in this room, you may remember this pose. So Kelly Roeder and I actually had a little conversation. He's a cross between Tom Selleck and Burt Reynolds. So again, thank you, Bob, and thank you for stopping by this morning. So now, before we begin, I'd like to welcome our new employees. We have so many new employees, and that's a good thing, because if we continue to talk about JJC being everyone's first choice, we want to be everyone's first choice as an employer as well. So we have such a large group. Rather than call everyone's names up, I was hoping you could stand by division. So first of all, we have new employees from Academic Affairs. If you're in the room, please stand up. Next, Student Development. Please stand. Administrative Services, please stand. Other new employees from Information Technology, Communications and Marketing, Human Resources and Resource Development, please stand. So something I can tell each of you, I have been very fortunate to be at Joliet Junior College for almost 21 years in December. And I can truly tell you, as the beginning of my beginning at JJC, as a returning adult student working part-time to today, being your very, very proud president, leading this institution, I welcome each of you here. And then also for our new employees, what I'd like to do is just introduce, and for those of you that have been here, you already know the cabinet, but for those that are new, it's very important for me to introduce to you my cabinet, who I'm very proud of as well. We work together as an amazing team, and I couldn't do what I do without them. So I'd like to begin first by introducing Melinda Carter, our Executive Director of Human Resources. Mr. Rob Gallick, VP of Administrative Services. Dr. Yolanda Isaacs, VP of Student Development. Dr. Randy Fletcher, our VP of Academic Affairs. Kelly Roeder, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing. And Jim Sir, our Executive Director of Information Technology. So for our new employees and all of our employees, know that we are here to serve you as well as the students of this institution. So if there's anything any of us can do to help, please reach out to us. Next, I'd like to acknowledge our upcoming retirees. Those have served the college for many years, and we will miss you. First, if Stan Carlisle from Facilities Services is here, if you're here, call when I say your name, and if not, then don't stand. Stanley Carlisle, Facilities Services. Mary Dalton, Natural Sciences, Sonia Louie, Admissions, Mildred Holmes from Counseling, and Brian McAllister from the bookstore. Thank you so much for your years of service. And welcome to the JJC family. Okay, little technology, go on. So again, congratulations and thank you. So something just I'm gonna be honest with you up front. So this is new technology, it's great. I love it, but we're working out the kinks, so we'll get through it. So just bear with me sometimes if it takes a little bit to get through. So changing gears now, I wanted to take this opportunity to reiterate and take time to stress to you my 4 pillars of success that I developed after my appointment last September. We have a very proud history at JJC as the first public community college in the nation. I think, thinking about our history, I developed these 4 pillars of success to guide my leadership focus. Each pillar concentrates on a different element that I'd like to briefly share with you now. You might remember that I unveiled these at my inauguration in February, and I think it's important to reiterate them to you today. My first pillar was to ensure fiscal responsibility and a stable budget. The second focuses on academic programming to meet the needs of a diverse student body and ever-changing society. The third pillar revolves around increasing our graduation and retention rates, leading to increased student success. And my last pillar is to focus on community and legislative engagement and philanthropic outreach. My plan is to share updates with you throughout the year on what I've been up to related to these pillars, but today I wanted to focus on the first pillar, especially with the news this summer that the state of Illinois finally passed a budget after 2 years, and actually what this means for JJC. As a recap, the budget provides that community colleges will receive 90% funding based on fiscal year 15 funding levels. The current base operating grant for community colleges is a little over $168 million, which means that JJC could receive a little over $7 million in total for fiscal year 18. So remember, this is in total. So it's the 50% plus an additional $2.5 million. Also included in the budget, amongst various other state-supported projects, is $10 million for our City Center campus. This $10 million is only a portion of the $25.5 million totally originally allocated by the state of Illinois to support this development. So you may recall that in October 2014, former Governor Pat Quinn came to Joliet and gave a press conference on site announcing $10 million from the state to support this project. We never received it as Governor Rauner froze those funds soon after he entered the office. This is the same money that's referenced in the fiscal year 18 state budget, and it's not a new earmark. So this funding will actually go back into our capital reserves to allow us to utilize that for debt service, future capital projects. So again, not new money to the operations of the institution. We were also very fortunate to receive our MAP funding for our students. It was approved for fiscal year 17 and 18, which is wonderful news. We've actually received the payments for fiscal year 17, so the MAP issue has proved to be a barrier for many of our students to attend the college. The college is in the process of applying these monies to the student accounts and providing refunds where applicable. So what does that mean for JJC today? We will present options for our Board of Trustees to consider at our August 29th workshop meeting in terms of how we apply the state funds as we receive them. I want to be clear that there are still many concerns that we have in this area. These include the ability of the state to successfully pass future state budgets. We all know next year is going to be an election year, and we know that, I do know, and we've read that Governor Rauner has replaced 21 of his staffers in his office, so we have to be prepared of what fiscal year 19 brings. We also know that there is a potential for the pension cost shift and the potential for a property tax freeze. If we receive a property tax freeze, the approximate cost to our institution is a reduction of $1 million each year. So again, significant dollars that we have to be concerned about. These are all things that would impact our college budget and planning significantly. So with this in mind, I still believe we're weathering the storm, so to speak, and my general recommendation will be to continue in a conservative approach as we think about budgeting for fiscal year 19. So while we're pleased to receive these funds this year, uncertainty remains beyond the budget with regards to state support and new legislation. It was very important to me that I shared these realities with you, but now I want to take us down a different path, the exciting path for Joliet Junior College. This photo looks familiar to you. It's from our May 2017 commencement ceremony and features our student speaker, Tiffany Voda. Tiffany was a returning adult student and attended JJC part-time while she worked towards earning her goal and earning her degree in construction management. Tiffany shared in her speech that it took her much longer than she anticipated to complete this degree, as she encountered various life challenges that threatened to throw her off course. Yet finally, in her 40s, she reached her goal. Tiffany was open about her challenges and spoke to the power of taking each day one step at a time. Yes, there were times that she didn't feel like she was making progress, but then there she was, addressing the class of 2017, proudly wearing her cap and gown, being celebrated in front of 3,000 people. So I've been thinking a lot about that idea this summer and the importance of acknowledging the small steps and what they ultimately become when viewed in their entirety. That brings me to this book. Who out there is familiar with Robin Sharma? I had the pleasure of listening to one of his talks at the AACC conference last spring. I was truly moved by his energy and thoughts and topic, and I read one of his books, The Leader Who Had No Title. One of the major themes throughout the book is the idea that innovation is created through evolution. The cabinet and I have spent a lot of time talking about that this summer, as well as reading the book together. As a college, we do so much every day. There are so many conversations, planning, meetings, events, activities over time that all move the needle. We have plans that help guide these activities, like our strategic plan, our strategic enrollment management plan. So can you remember some of the things you've done throughout the year that helped to move the needle? Let me share a few global highlights to refresh your memory. I also shared some of these last week with our community partners at the State of the College address. First, the JJC Foundation awarded over $513,000 in annual scholarships to our last year to support our students of all ages and backgrounds amidst state financial turbulence. These scholarships are supported by both individuals and organizations. We had a balanced budget for the 45th consecutive year, prior to Chairman Wunderlich being here. So a long time. Our sonography program received its accreditation in 2016 and is only 1 in 5 in the state of Illinois. Our agriculture program recently won the 2017 Outstanding Post-Secondary Program Award from the National Association of Agricultural Education. And we are up 7.8% in new students to JJC from fall 2015 to fall 2016. We also launched our new Human Services degree and certificate programs. We established the Communication Center. 900 students were contacted during this enrollment period with an 86% conversion or enrolled rate during spring semester. And we also saw a 40% increase in degrees and certificates awarded from 2016 to 2017, from 2,472 to 3,484. And the nursing program received a new 8-year accreditation. We launched a website. We also launched our website redesign initiative to support students and pathways. And as you know, we are opening our Romeoville campus this semester. The 50,028 square foot expansion includes space for enrollment services, financial aid, testing and tutoring, bookstore, cafeteria, classrooms, laboratories, and more. We have also completed the renovation of existing campus space, which was built in 1993. Another new feature at the Romeoville campus that is a wider variety of courses will be offered, including expanded primetime hours and early evening courses. Additionally, our students will be able to complete a full Associates of Science degree, a transfer degree, entirely at the Romeoville campus without coming back to main campus. This is truly amazing as we begin our new year and prepare to serve our students and guide them into their success. I think what's important to remember, the whole of our contributions over the last year. These make JJC the amazing college that it is. So first, let's give us all a round of applause. So to further emphasize this point, I have a video to remind you of some of the incredible things we did to move the needle positively and impact our students. Now, I think it's safe to say I made a memorable moment last year at General Session when I unveiled my Can't Stop the Feeling music video. While this video is not a coordinated dance effort, it did make me want to get up and dance a little bit in my office while watching it. So please take a look.
On myself, pick out, dust them off, put them back up on the shelf. Yes, my little baby girl is in need be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Got another mouth to feed. Leave it with the babysitter, mama call the grave digger. Gone with the falling leaves. Am I coming out of left field? Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might have had your fill, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, I feel it still. We could fight a war for peace. Give in to that easy living, goodbye to my hopes and dreams. Stop flipping for my enemies. We could wait until the walls come down. It's time to give a little to the kids in the middle. Oh, until it falls, won't bother me. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks. Yeah, your lover's an abyss for my heart to eclipse now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. I've been feeling it since 1966 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Ooh, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, but I feel it still. Might have had your fill, but I feel it still.
Wasn't that awesome? It was great. And just again, a quick year in review. And this is just a small sample of everything that goes on each and every day. I think if we had to put a video together with everyone, we'd probably be here for all afternoon, which we could do maybe next semester with popcorn and things like that, but we'll have to talk about Wayne about food in the event center. So all of these successes supported our goals in one way or another through our strategic plan, our enrollment and student success initiatives, and helping to make JJC the first choice in our community. Here is a quote from the book that I think will crystallize this idea for you. The best way for you to get to the next level of excellence in your work isn't by some revolutionary idea or some radical initiative. Great careers and great businesses are built by evolution, by slow and steady improvements that actually don't look much like when you view them in isolation. But over time, these small incremental evolutionary improvements amount to massive gains. That is how I want us to start thinking about our work here. Our true innovation will be born in a series of evolutionary actions. To help us consider this idea even more, I've invited a very special guest today that will discuss this with us, Dr. Sandy Shugart, our president of Valencia College. Dr. Shugart has served since 2000 as the 4th president of Valencia College in Greater Orlando, Florida. As the winner of the first Aspirin Prize for Excellence, Valencia is one of the most celebrated community colleges in America. Serving some 70,000 students per year, Valencia is known for high rates of graduation, transfer, and job placement, and has become something of a national laboratory for best practices in learning-centered education. Prior to Valencia, Sandy served as the president of North Harris College and as vice president and chief academic officer of the North Carolina Community College. In 2015, he was named by Washington Monthly Magazine as one of the 10 most innovative college and university presidents in America. He earned his PhD in teaching and learning from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In addition to his career in education, Dr. Shugart is a published poet, musician, and songwriter, and author of Leadership in the Crucible of Work, Discovering the Interior Life of an Authentic Leader. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shugart.
Good morning. I've been here before. I don't know how long ago it was. Maybe there's somebody who remembers I was here. I'm kind of a forgettable person, but I think it was about 8 years ago. I remember coming in February, and this is much nicer. It was late at night, and there was 2 feet of snow on the ground. It was still coming down, and I'm from Florida, and we don't know how to drive in snow. So I rented a car and drove really slow, like my grandmother, looking through the steering wheel to get here. But yesterday I arrived thinking, this place is really green. You have a farm in your front yard. It's astonishing. I love it. And I love doing this. I have spoken, probably to over 100 sort of first day back things at colleges and universities across the country in my 25 or so years as a president, and I just love this day. I love this day. I know you have mixed feelings. Some of you are just eager to get to your office and get to work because there's this wave building. They're coming. They're just over the horizon. They'll be here any minute, and you're not quite ready, and you want to get ready. I won't keep you long, I promise. But I do love this, and I love this because we are so fortunate to get to experience something that everyone used to, but hardly anybody does anymore. And that's seasonality in our work. There was a time when all human beings were either on or not very far removed from the land. And the land has a rhythm. And their lives had a rhythm. And every year they got to start fresh. And we're one of the very few works left that gets to do that. We get a fresh start. That's amazing. And who knows? This could be the perfect year. This is the year every student will meet their deadline. This is the year when nobody's grandmother will die. This could be the year when students buy their textbooks before class starts. And no one will ask, is this going to be on the test? And they'll all hang on every word the professor says. And no one will falsify their documents to get in-state residency. This could be the year. Anything could happen. Now, most things don't happen that quickly. It's called precipice theory. Most things don't happen just like that. Most things happen a little more gradually. Gradualism is more the natural way of things. So I'd ask you this, as you look across the arc of your work here, things getting better? Do you see incremental improvement from year to year? How does it look in retrospect? I think your best days are still ahead of you, and I think they've already begun. She didn't ask me to say this, but I want to tell you you're very fortunate to have the right leader at the right time. She knows you. She's one of you. You know her integrity. She appreciates the gifts you bring to your work every day, and she knows the long story of the oldest junior college in America and what difference you've made in this community and really in the whole movement. You're lucky to have her now. Take good care of her. I want to read a poem to you to get started. May I do that? That's my first calling in the world, is as a poet. I don't know how I ended up being a college administrator. It's a mystery to me, and it's probably a mystery to everybody that works with me. But I want to start with a poem. This is a little love poem I wrote to our faculty and staff a year or two ago, and it's called Lucky. Now, my other life, as you heard, my night job is as a musician. I have a band. It's called the January Band. We've been playing for many, many years, and twice have gotten record contracts and twice demurred on the travel schedule and walked away, but it's really fun. And my wife appreciates it. She keeps me aware of where we really are in life. She says, I love that you play music at night and thank God you have a day job. But this is a music metaphor. All of poetry is metaphor. Most of science is too. Did you know that? Most of human insight, creativity, is about perceiving similarities where people only imagined there were differences before. To say that this is like that. Like the old, Jimmy Webb song, "The moon's a harsh mistress." It's just a metaphor. How is the moon and a mistress the same? Right? Cold, beautiful, self-absorbed. All poetry is like that. Most scientific insight is like that. You know, the story of Newton discovering, quote unquote, gravity, the old mythology about that. How did that happen? What's the mythology? Where was Newton when he discovered gravity? Yeah, he was sitting under an apple tree and an apple fell. So we tell the story, must be gravity. I saw an apple fall. Of course, that's foolishness. Here's what really happened. He used a metaphor in explaining gravity that involved an apple. The question he was interested in is, how does the moon stay in orbit around the earth? How does that happen? And he was the first to understand that it wasn't in some shell or held there in suspension in the ether, but he understood that gravity was a force working in opposition to the velocity of the moon. That if he could take that apple and throw it at the same velocity, we know what escape velocity is now. It's about 17,500 miles an hour, right? If you could throw it that fast, it would be in orbit too, because the moon is in free fall around the earth. Gravity's working on the moon too, but so is the forward motion, the centrifugal motion, fugio, to flee. He saw something similar. So all poetry is like that, all science is like that, perceiving similarity where he thought there was difference. So here's a poem that compares our work to making music. It's called Lucky. There are times I need to pinch myself to prove this isn't just a dream. This work that reaches right down through the rich loam of rhythm and harmony to the roots of joy and shakes the whole tree of my existence with laughter and with apprehension that no matter how hard we play, this can't last. Of course, there are times when it feels like going through the motions. Not that we're phoning it in, but there just isn't anything happening. The notes are all there and the correct combinations, the right order, but there's no connection, no groove, no conversation, no jazz. But if I keep playing, keep trusting, even the hollow performance eventually serves only to intensify the real music when it happens. And it will happen. When the planets align, or the gods condescend, or the fundamental particles resonate with the wave of co-creation, which is to say, it feels, I feel, so incredibly lucky to be here in the endlessly unfolding work. So lucky not to be going through the motions of all the other jobs and careers and options to which I might have been resigned. So lucky to be here with you who also know the rush when it all comes together. And so lucky to have learned, the more I practice, the luckier I get. It's lucky. We are very, very fortunate people. And I want to talk about this notion of how things improve, how things get better. Evolution is an interesting metaphor for it. And I like the book as well. You have to turn a blind eye to some issues there, but it's a good metaphor. I mean, the issues are evolution is, how shall I say, doesn't benefit the folks who are experiencing it. It benefits generations later. And that's not the change you want. You want change that benefits now. And evolution is really messy. Natural selection is very costly. For every aberration that conveys an advantage in the genome, there are millions that cause you to die. So it's sort of random. And you don't want random evolution. You want guided. You want designed change. But it's still gradual. It's still incremental most of the time. Now, even in evolution, though, there are moments of rapid change. It's called punctuated equilibrium. It was a heretical idea 30 years ago. Now it's the orthodoxy in biology. Where are my biology professors? Yeah. You all know this. Punctuated equilibrium says, no, evolution doesn't occur very gradually all the time. There are moments at which it accelerates dramatically, usually under some environmental change or pressure, and then it seems to slow down again. It was finally explained sections of the fossil record. So change can happen quickly from time to time, but most of the time it's gradual. I want to talk with you a little bit about that because we want intentional change. We want to cause things to happen that make the lives of the people we serve better, the mission of the institution more fulfilling, the work we do more meaningful, all those things. We want all that. And I call this swimming with the sharks. So we've been through treacherous waters, and we will be. You heard some of that about the budget. I'm not going to go through all these. These are the list of nightmares that college presidents have all the time, what terrible things are happening around us, how nobody appreciates us. We can whine like nobody's business. And it is an interesting time, a stormy time. The waters are treacherous. We're dealing with all of these issues. You're dealing with issues like this and others. Some of yours are big and some of yours are more localized. But as we're coming through them, there's still this expectation and desire we have to transform what's happening around us. And the transformation for us is of a peculiar kind. You've been around a long time. Community colleges have been around a long time. But we were mostly misunderstood. It's only in the last 8 or 10 years that the country seems to have awakened to the potential we have, the power of high access, democratic, learning-centered, student-focused, community-based institutions to change everything. If only we could get better results. Right? If only the graduation rates were higher, the completion rates. If only students could perform at a higher level. That's been the challenge the past 10, 15 years. The completion by design movement, all those sorts of things. That's what all that's about is, it's positive. They see the potential power we have, but they're worried that we don't get results that are good enough to deliver on the promise. That's kind of where we are. And the promise is pretty straightforward. Everybody wants to see quantum improvements in the outcomes that we produce, in spite of the fact that we continue to work with consistently more challenged students, economically challenged, culturally challenged, sometimes academically challenged as they come to us. And they'd like for us to do that while we spend less money. That's all we have to do. Sounds easy, right? All we need to do is get Harvard results at 1/10 of the expenditure per student. So that's a little off-putting to me. There we go. This isn't working, so I'm going to get some help. There we go. So this is what we want to imagine. Imagine this. Imagine that we could get 5-year graduation rates above 50%. Do you know what yours is? Around the country, the 5-year graduation rate for community colleges is below 20%. It's about 18% nationally. It moves a little bit from year to year. And it depends a little bit on their program mix. But that's kind of the industry standard. When I came to Valencia almost 20 years ago, ours was a little higher than that. It was almost 30%. We were leading the industry. What if the post-secondary participation rate in the communities you serve was above 60% in every community? Okay? What if there were no gaps identifiable in the student outcomes, their learning and their completion that were correlated to what neighborhood they grew up in, what kind of family they lived in, what language their parents spoke, whether the school they attended was affluent or not affluent, or any of the other things you might point to. What if those gaps disappeared? And what if your transfer and placement rates, transfer to upper division schools and completion of graduation with bachelor's degrees, and your placement rates in careers were routinely above 90%? Right? That's what they want from us. That's all. Well, I want to share this not to brag, but to give you hope. We've been working at that together as a community for almost 20 years, and here's what our results are. You can't see this very far back, so I'll read it to you. What the bar graph is the highest degree earned from students who started with us 8 years ago. So it tracks the cohort of all the degree-seeking students over an 8-year period. It turns out 8 years is how long we need to track. After that, it doesn't change very much. And the results are now astonishing. I told you before, our graduation rate 15, 18 years ago was about 30%. We were proud of it. Today, 8 years later, 33% of the students in the cohort have earned a bachelor's degree. Another 25% have earned an associate's degree, but not yet a bachelor's degree. Another 6 or 8% have completed a formal certificate. And believe it or not, after 8 years, about 4.5% are still enrolled. These are the ones that you think are employed at the college, but they're not. You know what I mean? We have a handful of students we're thinking about awarding tenure to. One course a semester, forever, right? But they're degree seeking. What this is to say is that we believed that the best we could do 20 years ago was to get 1 in 3 to be successful. And today, 2 in 3 are successful. And that's something to celebrate. It can be done. We're not special. We're not smart. Our students aren't affluent. Our students are immensely diverse. We're a Hispanic serving institution. It's a low-income region, all the service area jobs. Lots of in-migration from other places where English isn't the first language. We're an urban institution, and we're getting these results. Again, I'm not bragging. Here's what I want to say. It's doable. It actually can be done. Our conversation, our gathering like this is next week on Thursday, is if this is where we are, and we'll look at the whole history of where we've been, my question will be, what does it take to get to 75% success? Can we get from 66 to 75? That seems reachable. And when we get there, I'm going to ask, can we get to 80? Is 80 crazy? Is it insane to think we could get to 80? And I don't tell them how to do it. That's the nature of this kind of innovation. Whoops, back up. So we're doing a bunch of things. We're doing all sorts of things. We've been adding all sorts of initiatives for years. And people come to Valencia to see our work and say, how are you getting these results? It's amazing, it's wonderful. And they want to, whatever we're doing, they want to do 2 of them. And I said, fine, well, I'll show you what we're doing. It's what everybody else is doing. We're all inventing this together. Everybody's doing deeper partnerships with our schools and our universities so that the students don't experience us as a hodgepodge of self-absorbed institutions that don't give a damn what happens to them. So we're trying to pull all the institutions in the pre-K through graduate school in our region together and say, how are we serving the students across our boundaries, sharing data, doing the work together? Yes, we have a thing called Start Right, or the New Student Experience. I'll talk more about it in a few minutes, where we have given intensive support to students as they come through the front door. I'll give you the details of that in a few minutes. It's huge, it's expensive, it's really valuable, and it's changing everything. A serious beginning experience where students discern, why am I here, and what's it going to take to get where I want to go, and who do I have on my shoulder from now on to get me there. Okay? We're doing that. We've got guided pathways. That's the big thing around the country. So that's really about sorting through curriculum matters. And you know what? In the occupational areas, they've been doing it forever and doing it well. So we had to learn in general education, in the AA degree program, how to do the things they have been doing forever. And there are great challenges, particularly curriculum challenges in that, because we in the AA degree think we know what we're doing, and we don't. So we're doing a lot of work in that area. The faculty are all over it. And you have to do that with your partners, because while you may think your AA makes sense, when that student presents it, if they're lucky enough to earn one to a university, how it's treated depends on not just which university they're presenting it to, but what door they walked through when they presented it. Department by department. It's insanity. So we're having to work with them. We're working that through. High engagement pedagogies. This is at the center of our work. We've spent 25 years supporting our faculty in development they do together. They design it, they organize it, they run the system, it's theirs, and it is powerful. And the culture of teaching and learning and the scholarship of teaching and learning is as strong at Valencia as any place I've ever seen. And that's not something you can replicate overnight. In some ways, that's the secret sauce. And deep, deep redesigns of our systems. We've spent years asking ourselves these stupid questions like, what are the dumbest things we do? What are the most idiotic things we do that we know are bad for students and we know they're bad for their learning, but we do them anyway? And why do we do them? You know what the answer to that is. We do all sorts of things because we've always done them. We do all sorts of things because we think we have to protect enrollment, because enrollment's the real god of community colleges, not learning. Right? That's who we have to dethrone. The iconoclasts need to smash the icon. And that means my job is to make sure enrollment isn't the god of the institution. It's a business outcome. But it's not the purpose of the institution. It doesn't tell you whether you're good or not. It generates some revenue. Outcomes, that's what we're about. Learning, that's what we're about. So we've redesigned system after system after system around making learning the real value. How do our students learn? How does this system support that learning? And I can go into any of those you're interested in later. But when we show those to everybody and say, here's how it works here, their first reaction is, oh my God, how did you get buy-in to do this? Have you ever heard that question? How do you get the faculty to buy in? How do you get the student affairs to buy into this? And I'll just tell you plainly, we don't believe in buy-in. Buy-in's bogus. Here's buy-in. When my son, who's now taller than I am, was about 7, he and I would wake up real early in the morning on a Saturday morning because we were on the same schedule. And he'd find me and say, hey, let's make pancakes for the girls. He has 3 older sisters, and my mother-in-law lives with us, and there's my wife, and all the dogs are female. I don't know who he's referring to, but let's make pancakes for the girls. Okay. So here's what we do. I'd get all the stuff out, pots, pans, ingredients. I'd measure everything. I'd put it all together. He would stir. I'd bake the pancakes and heat the oven and put them in the oven and keep them warm, and I'd set the table. He'd go knock on the doors and tell them, we made pancakes. That's buy-in. It's juvenile. It's perfectly appropriate with a 7-year-old. But we're not 7-year-olds. In place of buy-in, you have to substitute something much more powerful. And it's called collaboration, and it's real. And it begins with collaboratively defining the problem you want to solve or the outcome you want to achieve. You don't start with how, you start with what. What is it we want together? And it is about culture, not strategy, in the end. So you've got to shift culture, you've got to dive into collaboration, and then I want to talk a little bit about how design moves it forward. So culture is a tough thing. Can you see that? And that's an image of Sisyphus, I guess, pushing the rock up the hill. How do you understand? How do you engage? How do you shape in an organization's like the ones we live in, a coherent, purposeful culture. How do you do that? Is culture something you can make? Can you change it? What is it? In most institutions of higher education, sociologists would describe our culture as refractory. Refractory. That means competing interests that somehow balance each other out in a balance of terror. You're working for your objectives, they're working for theirs, you're competing for resources. Somehow it all works out and everybody's unhappy. Okay? This is typical university culture, very typical. And the older the institution, the more subject it is to this kind of refractory nature. I want to talk a little bit about that. So the way to change culture is you got to dive in. You can't do it at a distance. You got to be willing to take some risks. So I love this slide. I've used this slide for many years. I just think about this. I was a surfer once upon a time. Can you see the slide? You see what's in the wave? You see the shadow? What's this guy thinking right now? There's two words, and the first one is "oh." What is he thinking? Holy cow. This is what we've been doing for 20 years. It takes courage and risk. Go in the water, there's sharks. Right? Nothing changes till you're willing to get in the water with the shark. Now, I want to talk a little bit about culture with you and how this work gets done. Whoops. Here. One more. There. So, if you were asked in a safe environment, no power around, trusted colleague, what do you think are the dominant cultures at our college? What would the answer be? What are the real cultures? Not the ones we talk about, not the ones we put in our planning documents. The cultures are understood through their artifacts. You don't make culture any other way. You make it by making artifacts. An artifact is a budget. An artifact is a plan. An artifact is the stories and jokes we routinely tell about the other people we work with. An artifact is the old legend about how that building came to be. These are the things that the fabric of the culture is found in its artifacts. So what are the artifacts that speak most powerfully to your cultures? When I arrived at Valencia in January of 2000, I asked the head of institutional research, which report that you publish, and you publish hundreds of them, which report does everybody read? What report do you have that if you stop publishing it, people would beat the door down and yell at you? And the answer was the Instructional Productivity Report, the IPR. You probably have one of these. Average class size, enrollment trends, ratios of full-time to part-time. It's all about the enrollment. It became clear to me over time, this is one of the artifacts, that the dominant culture of Valencia was enrollment good, spending bad. It was essentially a stewardship culture. Take care of the money, take care of the enrollment, and everything else will take care of itself. So I said, okay, here's the deal. We're coming up on planning for the next fall term. You are forbidden to produce this report. When people call, you tell them, sorry, we're not running it this year. The president asked us not to. The place went nuts. There was a black market in enrollment information. They were all over the place. It was just a test. Meanwhile, out of the fringes of the college, there was about 125 faculty and staff who'd been in deep conversation for 6 or 7 years, funded from soft money, things like Kellogg grants and Title III grants and so on. And they were asking a different set of questions. Not whose enrollment's up and down, who's more productive, what can we afford to do. They were asking, who's learning what? Is this the best our students can do? Where are our students thriving and where are they failing? They were asking much more interesting questions. And I knew soon after I got there, my job is going to be to move the fringe culture to the center of the college and unseat the dominant culture. An interesting word. How do you do that? How do you undermine destructive cultures? How do you get past the refractory nature of competitive cultures and get people to come together around common purpose? Aren't those good questions? I like those questions. Whether you're in an academic department or you're off on the edge of the campus taking care of the stuff that everybody takes for granted, or you're keeping the campus beautiful and amazing as an environment, or you're making sure everybody's safe, or you're collecting the revenue to make sure there's money to run the place, or you're helping students figure out, what am I doing here? Whatever your role may be, you're embedded in a culture, and you might want to understand it. You might even want to influence it. Now, culture and evolution. I just want to go on a little side trip here for a minute, because these are not the things that define your culture. You can't define your culture around enrollment. That can't be it. We've tried it. I can explain why we're that way. It's nobody's fault. It's historic. It's the way community colleges were designed largely in the 50s and 60s during the heyday of the manufacturing culture in America. We were not designed to be intimate learning environments. We're designed to be a factory. The students are raw material. I'm sorry, faculty, you were meant to be line workers, and we're going to assembly line them out, and the graduates are called products, and they get sent out into an economy. That's the way we were designed. It's horrible. It's dreadful. And it's very hard to undermine and change because it's deep in the DNA. But we know that doesn't work. That doesn't get the results we want. Buildings are amazing. This one's beautiful. I love this place. But that's not what the college is. The college isn't its buildings, is it? There was a time not very long ago when in the retail world they thought, wow, what a beautiful mall we have here. What's happened to the malls? They're all turning into crazy churches because they're empty. Okay? It can't be the buildings. It's not even our programs, right? The cool programs don't define the culture. It's not our finances. It's not our politics. Gosh, you know, you're probably not like this. Sometimes I visit colleges where you'd think that 80% of what they're about is the intra-institutional politics. You know, who won at whose expense during this round? Why don't they appreciate us? They and us and them, us and them. That can't be right. It's not even your recognitions. It's nice to be recognized. So what? How are you going to define your culture? So I would start here. Faculty, raise your hand. I want to speak to you, just you for a second. Thank you for being here. Every pedagogy implies an anthropology. What's yours? This is common conversation at our place. Every pedagogy implies an anthropology. What's yours? If you can't answer that question, then your practice is ungrounded. You do not want to be a Jiffy Lube technician, knocking off somebody else's procedures because they worked for them. You can learn from others, but you want your practice to be grounded in some deep reflection on what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a human adult or near adult or not quite so near adult? One of my working theories right now is that all of America's problems come back to one thing, and that's that 92.7% of the men are 10 and a half years old. But what does it mean to be an adult or a near adult? And then finally, what does it mean to be an adult or near adult learner? What do you believe about your learners? What makes them tick? Is talent rare or common? Are there really people who can't learn math? Or is that cultural? Does talent know what neighborhood it was born in, or is that just a question of opportunity? There are lots of important questions to ask. And they're anthropological in nature. What does it mean? Everyone who's not a faculty member, every process, every procedure, the layout of your service spaces, the way you interact routinely with your students, all implies an anthropology. What's yours? You see, the dominant anthropologies in the Western world have come to be two. If you want to read more about this, you could read, there's a great sociologist named Christian Smith, who's not far from here. He's at Notre Dame, I think. He's written deeply on this. The two are sort of homo economicus. That is, all human beings are financial optimizers. All decisions are really, at the end of the day, about stuff. And everything else we do just covers that up. And so you can treat people essentially as consumption engines. Right? This is deep in our culture now. In most management cultures in the private sector, they think if they can just figure out what their strategy is and align the reward system to the strategy, everything will work. Because the rats will follow the maze if they know there's cheese at the end of it. And the other dominant anthropology is determinism, biological determinism. Human beings do what they're determined to do, and choice is just a story we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night. And their trajectory is pretty much shaped long before we ever see them. And we're playing at the margins. Those are the two dominant anthropologies in Western culture right now. Oh, on the face of them, nobody lives that way, but somehow our institutions construct systems that live that way. And we have to challenge those. I want to take a quick detour and say, this is important for this reason. I want to go back and say, into deep human history. This is anthropological reflection as well. Any anthropologists in the room, by the way? No? Good, I can say whatever I want. There were 4 modern human species. Do you know this? There were 4. The one that has succeeded is called Homo sapiens, right? The wise humans. Aren't we kind to ourselves? Homo sapiens, thinking human. Right? The other fairly successful one, but no longer, was called Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthal, right? That's this guy. It turns out he didn't look like this. This is an image of Neanderthal man from the 20s and 30s. Turns out they look a lot more like us than we thought. As the fossil evidence and our capacity to build models of people from their skeletal remains has improved, they look a lot more like us than we think. And they had similar brain capacity and similar other capacities. But they were outcompeted. They were stronger. They appeared to have been better hunters, but we outcompeted them. They're extinct. The other 2 human species were in very isolated geographies, and they lasted a long time until Homo sapiens made it to their islands, and then they disappeared. So the other 3 are extinct. Only Homo sapiens survived. This guy and Homo sapiens lived together in harmony about 100,000 years ago. They both used fire. They both used tools. There's some evidence that there was a modest amount of intermingling sexually, but not much. You can tell a little bit of that from the mitochondrial DNA studies. But somewhere around 30,000 years ago, this guy disappeared almost overnight. What happened? So the best thinking about that now suggests that there was a breakthrough for Homo sapiens. And the breakthrough was the development of a thing called fictive language. Fictive language. the capacity to think about and speak about things that don't actually exist. Think about that for a minute. Non-concrete, conceptual. So you could, for example, say, I know that our fathers and their fathers and their fathers taught us to hunt mastodons this way, to run among the herd and try to jab them in the soft spot with the lance. But I was just thinking, what if we could find a box canyon and sort of herd them into it and then climb up on the edges and drop rocks on their heads? Wouldn't that work better? See what I mean? That's a story. It's a mythology. I just told you a story about the future. And now we can collaborate to make it real. It turns out that fictive language, the ability to tell stories, big organizing myths, small stories, whatever it may be, does two things. One is it causes you to be able to cohere socially. And secondly, it allows you to plan and work together at scale. Prior to this, the largest scale of a natural human community seems to have been about 150 people. Beyond that, the social unrest, the competition among the males and so on, gets out of hand and you have violence. Fictive language allowed human communities to grow to scale and cooperate with one another for the common good. Which is to say, it created social evolution, which is infinitely faster than biological evolution, and it is all about intentional innovation. It's what makes us who we are. So, that's a little side story. I just want you to think about that. What are the stories, the mythologies that make things possible for you? We now have this goes way back. All of anthropology and archaeology have been turned on its head in the last 15 years. We used to, you all studied this stuff in grade school, right? You know, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Tigris and Euphrates, all that stuff that goes back about 3,500 years BCE. Well, 20 years ago, they discovered a place in eastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. It's a huge, elaborate temple complex with beautiful carvings buried in the sand, apparently intentionally, 9,500 years BCE, 6,000 years earlier than anyone thought possible. There's a lot more to discover about all this. It's really interesting. My point for you is if you want to change culture, you've got to change narrative. The story drives the culture. And if the story is authentic and supported by evidence and widely shared and touches on common caring, common concern, it has power. So we were looking for that at Valencia. What story you would care about? And it turned out that the story we cared most about was learning. The story that cut across every category. Completion's good. Learning's better. Okay? Learning. The rest of the country was talking about if we could get students to complete, that would be a good thing. And by the way, they will have learned more. We flipped it on its head and said, if more students learned coherently, deeply, that's a good thing. And by the way, it'll reflect itself in their completion and what they're able to do beyond completion. Everybody in the institution can find a handle on that. Because causing learning to occur depends on creating conditions that are conducive to learning. And those conditions are shaped by everybody in this room. Everybody. If you work in buildings and grounds, raise your hands. Anybody work in buildings and grounds, or are they all out there working? You work in buildings and grounds, you have great power over the learning environment here. Teachers, have you ever had the experience of that room in the building that everyone knows you could hang meat in? The coldest room on earth? Or the opposite, the one you could cook the meat in. And everybody says, give that to the new faculty. They don't know any better, right? Well, we were talking about this one time at Valencia, and a grounds guy came up to me and says, do you know who I am? And I said, I've seen you around, but no, I can't call your name. We have 3,000 employees. He said, I'm Jose. Do you know what I do? And I said, no. He says, I mow. I mow. That's what I do. We have now 8 campuses, soon 10. There's a lot of grass. He's an expert mower. He said, I understand now what you meant. What you're telling me is I should mow up close to the campus, up around the windows of the classrooms, in the times of day when there's no students and teachers in there. And I should mow away from the campus when all that teaching and learning stuff's going on, so I don't disrupt it. I said, yes, you have power. He said, well, I have some power. I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't set the mowing schedule. My supervisor does. You need to talk to him. Everybody in the room can affect the environment for learning. Every piece of that condition. I mean, think about what those things are. Increasing the time people have to learn. Right? Increasing their engagement or decreasing the disengaging things that happen. Doing deep assessment work. Some of you are out of the classroom but doing that. Some of you are in and doing that. Making sure the work is rigorous and challenging and interesting. Right? And making sure they know you care. I belong here. So we began focusing on that and said, what if we made learning the center of our work? What if we said in every decision, including making a budget, how will this improve student learning? And how will we know it? What evidence will we collect to prove it does? So we did all sorts of things. I'm going to go through that quickly. I want to talk a little bit about collaboration now. So this could not have happened if I was the smartest guy in the world and told everybody what they needed to do. We've all endured that before. It's called a pain in the neck. Ego-centered leadership. Right? We had to invent collaborative models of doing our work. And collaboration isn't just a spirit. It's not like we're all in this together. It's certainly not buy-in. Collaboration is a disciplined process of making better decisions because different people know different things. And we began to look for examples of how we could do this. And the example we came down to was architecture. So there are ways that architects manage a collaborative process to produce a building like this. Anybody here ever been on a committee that helped design a building? Some of you have, so you know the process. The classic process is in 4 steps. Step 1 is called architectural program. No one draws. Everybody comes to the first meeting. I think it ought to be a Gothic cathedral. No, I think it ought to be a 1-story Florida vernacular. No, I think it ought... The architect says, sorry, nobody's drawing anything, not for months. What you have to contribute here is, what are you going to do in the building? What do you want the building to do for you? It's a tool. Tell me what you'll be doing in it and why you're doing it there, and who needs to be near you when you do it, and why they need to be near you, and so on. And eventually, the architect, having listened to the experts who are using the building, excuse me, writes a dissertation. It's a document. It's called an architectural program. Then, having approved it, agreed to it, we've made a decision. This is the program. Then they move to the next step. And the next step says, I wonder how we could deliver that. What are the best options? It's called schematic design. Should it be 3 stories or 2 stories? Should it be open or closed? Should the offices be on one side of the building or scattered throughout? All kinds of decisions they have to make that are conceptual and say, here are the 3 best ideas we have for delivering this building. And eventually they get to one and they say, that's it. And they agree, and you don't go backwards. This is it. We have agreement. Then they go to the next step. And the next step is called design development. And now the architects have a lot more input because they know how to deliver on that schematic better than you do. They know about building codes and materials and electrical stuff and things you don't know. So their expertise is beginning to come. You had your input early, they're going to have their input late. Your input's on what, their input is on how. And they do design development, and they work out in great detail. You're still in the room, you can still point out flaws in their thinking. And then you finish it, design development, and you have blueprints and all sorts of stuff. And it's agreed to, this is it, we're done. And then you go to the fourth step, and it's called construction drawings. And you're not in the room, only the architects and engineers are. And they're doing that huge stack of plans that they will hand to the subcontractors who will actually install the cable and lay the block and all that stuff. You don't have any expertise in that area. You don't get to contribute to that. Your contribution was on the front end. Now, you can, for yourself, sort out why that's powerful. The right expertise at the right step. The architects have the humility not to build a beautiful building that's not functional. You have the humility to say, my input's on what we need to do, their input is on how to do it. See how that works? And you don't go back. So many academic institutions do work in ways that's guaranteed to lead to a train wreck in the last 10% of the work. How many times have you been to that dance? We've used this process to redesign faculty compensation, the tenure process, the governance model, twice. It's non-controversial. We do stuff that everybody says, oh, I wouldn't do that. Redesign the general education core, add to the general education core while we're taking other things away. These are hard things to do. The budget's built this way. We even have built spaces in the college for these meetings that prevent you from behaving in the most destructive way we behave, which is called the committee. Right? The committee is where everybody makes up their mind before they get there, and they sit in the same seat every year, and they say the same things every year because their job is to try to persuade you, even though they know they're not going to. The purpose of a committee is to prevent change and give the illusion of input. So we've walked away from most of our committees. There are a few places where it matters. The curriculum committee ought to be conservative. Got it. But most of these things aren't that kind of work. So we've changed everything, and it's because collaboration is a discipline we pursue, not just a value that we hold. And so we ask these questions on the front end. What should we work on? What's our working? Why should we work on that? And how do we think it works? How do we prototype and test quickly the best ideas that came out of that conversation? How do we scale it if it works? And how do we get rid of it if it doesn't? We don't do pet projects, and we don't do projects that can't scale because they waste resources and time just to keep one person happy. We don't do hobbies. The students are too important, and their learning is too important. And how do we ultimately integrate these solutions so that they make sense together? Those are the things we talk about all the time. Here's an example. We were still struggling. This is before we put our new student experience in and so on. We were still struggling to get the results, and we had sorted out that almost all of the failure we saw was early. And so we went to visit students. They can tell you an awful lot about their experience. We spent a lot of time listening to them and testing what they told us against the literature, the scholarship. And we came to this conclusion that every student needs 6 things to succeed. They probably need more, but these are the 6 we focused on. Turns out they turned into 6 Ps. Here's what students need. They told us they need a place. That is, they need to belong. Is this my place? Do I belong here? Or am I a refugee again? Am I on the outside? How do you get students to know they belong here? Second was students need to discern a purpose for being here. The most powerful predictor we had of graduation was whether the student could answer the question, yes, I'm here for this specific purpose. Now, most can't answer that. And the purpose doesn't have to be of a particular type. Some of them, the answer was, transcendental. I'm going to become a physician and go heal the natives in the Amazon. And sometimes it was, I've always wanted to make sergeant before I retired. Okay? It's just some purpose. So, how do you get a student to discern purpose? Once they have purpose, you have to name a pathway for them. That's our job. If this is where you want to go, here's how you go to get there. And you know that literature, the shapeless river literature that says, we tell students, we can take you anywhere, but you got to figure it out yourself. Here's a catalog with 3,000 courses in it. Half of our enrollment's in 30 of them, but here's 3,000 courses, figure it out. And by the way, what's in the catalog changes every 2 years. And by the way, there are transfer guides that need to change more often than that. And by the way, what we tell you may or may not be respected by the institution you go to next, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we needed really clear and useful pathways to say, this is your way there. Then the student needs a plan, semester by semester to graduation. That's how they make the pathway their own. And all this is working theory for us, right? Coming out of the collaborative design. So we looked around and said, well, when do students write down their plan? And at 90% of the community colleges in America, they write it down one time in their last semester. It's called an application for graduation. It's the first time they've written it down and submitted it to anybody at the college. We said, we're going to do that in the first semester. Every student will have, by the end of their first semester, clearly identified how they connect here, why they're here, what pathway they should be on, and they'll have a plan to graduate. And then we said, a lot of these students need different kinds of preparation, and we have been putting them through that without them understanding why they need it. Okay? They come to school expecting to register. We say, go take a test. Don't prepare for it. It's in an area you don't like and something you haven't studied in 4 years, but go take it. And then we're going to send you to another place to fix you. So we said, no, let's stop doing that. Instead, let's get the students in as partners to figure out, if this is my pathway and plan, what preparation do I need? And they elect the preparation. And there are many ways to get the preparation. And the preparation isn't all developmental. It's all kinds of preparation. With me? And then we said, finally, every student who succeeded could tell us a story about some person that helped them succeed. Maybe personal is important. Now, it happened all the time in the institution. I mean, everywhere I go, I see an amazing student, I'd say, tell me how you got here. And they would tell me a story, the same story every time. So-and-so. Not you have an amazing buildings here, that's why I was successful. You have a great strategic plan, that made me successful. Your technology is awesome, it made me successful. Every one of them would say, Lily got me through something. Sometimes they couldn't name the person, but they could see him. She got me through college algebra. He helped me figure out a reason to be here. About half the time, what they told us was a story where somebody broke the rules for them. Right? She understood when my child was sick that I couldn't get there and gave me extra time, even though her syllabus said, if you're late, I will kill you. Right? It's the personal side of this. Let me put a footnote on this. This is the biggest challenge. Not just in colleges. Right? Our culture has turned over human service to giant institutions, and it's amazing. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you didn't learn to read unless you were male and prosperous and white. Now everybody learns to read. 200 years ago, if you got the measles, you died, unless you were really, really prosperous and fortunate. Right? 200 years ago, you ate whatever you could find, You didn't go to the grocery store and eat star fruit and dragon fruit and things from all over the world. These giant institutions we created are amazing. Healthcare and universal literacy and opportunity for training and education to the masses. They're awesome. And they're awful because they standardize and depersonalize and destroy people they were designed to serve through procedure. I think this century, last century was the century of scaling institutions. This century will be the century where we have to discover how to treat human beings as persons and not numbers at scale. It's a scary work. Person. So this is the theory, and we talked about it, and we published it, and everybody had voice on it. And then we said, okay, that's it. What are we going to do about it? So then we go to the next stage of the process, and we made the 6 Ps real. So we started this, we created a course called the New Student Seminar. It's a general education requirement, 3 semester credit hours. Every student must take it in their first 15 hours. Every student. Transfer, I don't care where you come from, you take this course. We make very few exceptions. There are a few that are made personally, not by rule. Right? But the rule is everybody takes it. We hired 31 faculty full-time and distributed half of the course load to full existing faculty and half to this new faculty, and developed a new curriculum for it. They teach a heavy load, but they don't have other jobs to do. They have this job to do. The person who teaches this course is also the academic advisor to that student for at least a year. Because the relationships that are formed in the classroom, not in a cubicle. Sending students to the bullpen to get a different advisor every time they went wasn't working for us. So he said, the first half of your program here, you're going to have, at least the first half, the same person who wakes up every morning knowing I've got 150 people whose lives at Valencia are on my watch. And if I don't hear from them, they're going to hear from me. And I know them well enough to know what purpose they discerned in my class and what pathway they chose. And I can go into the software we created and see where they are on the pathway. And I get an alert if they wander off of it that triggers a conversation. And they have my numbers. You understand? Personal. So in this course, they discern purpose. In this course, they try out pathways. They can't get out of this course without submitting a plan to graduate. And so on. And then added to that are a variety of co-curricular experiences. Everybody's involved with this to help them get engaged, find a home, solve a problem, whatever it is. There's a rich co-curricular, and it churns this different stuff every year. And we had an a priori, an advanced designed data model to say, here's how rigorously we're going to test whether this works or not. And we look at that data after every term. Is it working? Are there places where it isn't working? What's different about them? It's a communal conversation. The designers are in the redesign process because all design is redesign. Okay? And we have clear points of progress, transitions for those students, and we know what interventions are in the toolbox for each one of those points of transition. And finally, we pay attention to their success beyond the college. It's not enough to get an AA degree. It's not enough to get an AA degree and transfer to our local university, University of Central Florida. I want to know how you performed in macroeconomics after you got there, if you're a business major. I want to know how you performed in the 4th course in calculus if you're an engineering major. You know, we have gateway courses, so do they. And we own responsibility for preparing our students to succeed in their gateway courses. And so we have data sharing conversations and curriculum alignment conversations. You have to own the ecosystem, not just the institution. And they do too. We're really fortunate to be a place where that works. Just one more slide or two. So The very first strategic plan we put together around these values had as its first of 5 goals a goal we called learning first. That's the learning-centered story. This was a fad in 2000. There were 20 or 30 colleges across the country who were doing the bar and tag learning-centered college. Almost all of them have gone on to the next fad and the one after that. We're still here. We don't think it's a fad. We think this is the real work. Learning is still first. No matter what your role in the college is, learning is still first. And there are lots of things we've done I won't go into that still reflect that. Our work is still about improving learning. Measuring it, improving it, measuring it, improving it. And this is something I say everywhere I go. I know I don't need to say it here, but in most of higher education, if they're honest, administrators think of faculty as a problem, a nuisance, children, difficulty, a constituency to be mollified, something. We think the faculty are the solution to learning challenges, and they will lead us where we need to go, especially if we deal them in as co-owners who have to understand with me the resource constraints, the political issues, the challenges of a board. All those things are there. They're real. They can know those things too, and they can contribute with that knowledge to leading us where we need to go. Almost everything we've done that's been powerful for learning has had faculty at least co-leading it, if not leading it. They're the solution, not the problem. Okay. So, I want to go one step further and then wrap. And I am almost a half hour early, so if you don't remember anything else, remember me for that. If you want, we can do 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A, but it's such a big room that's hard to do. And what usually happens is the people with the best questions are shy, and the people who are not shy don't have very good questions. And you know who you are. And if you don't, we all do. So, I want to go back to this personalization issue for just a minute and tell you we're all different. Our differences are interesting and fun to explore. And people come to work for different reasons. I'm working on an article now that I'll try out on you for just a second. I think a lot of people come to work, the core of work for them is about calling. What difference am I going to make in the world? And they really measure their work life and their contribution around calling. Am I doing something that matters? There are others who don't think that way at all. They come to work for craft. Is it good work? Did we do it the best it can be done? That's an interesting value too. Then there are folks who come to work for a powerful sense of community. This is where my identity is being shaped with other people, and I love who I'm on the journey with, or I don't. But it's what matters the most to me, is the community I'm in. There's some people who come to work because they're the folks who like to climb mountains that can't tell you why they did it. They come for challenge. You know, I majored in, I don't know, particle physics because it was hard. It was the hardest thing they offered, so that's where I went. There are folks who are attracted to challenge. I love having them around. There's some who are deeply touched by competition. Winning is what matters to them. They live their whole lives either as a competition or an argument. They're trying to persuade you or make you think the way they are, or they want to beat you and be the best, or they want you to join their team and beat everybody else. They're moved by We're all so different. How do we work together? What do we have in common? So I want to suggest an idea to you, and it's this. Back to anthropology. Here's what we have in common. We have this in common at work and everywhere else. We don't talk about it at work, but if you're human, you have this characteristic. You have a profound need to love and to be loved. If I were looking for a way to come together, that's where I would start. How do we love our students? And how do we love one another? I don't mean mushy, motherly. I'm not your mommy. Okay? There are all kinds of love. So I'll finish with a poem about that. It's called True Love. There is a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours, especially if you have waited years, and especially if part of you never believed you could deserve this loved and beckoning hand held out to you this way. I am thinking of faith now and the testaments of loneliness and what we feel are worthy in this world. What we feel we are worthy of in this world. Years ago in the Hebrides, I remember an old man who walked every morning on the gray stones to the shore of baying seals, who would press his hat to his chest in the blustering salt wind and say his prayer to the turbulent Jesus hidden in the water. And I think of the story of the storm and everyone waking and seeing the distant yet familiar figure far across the water calling to them, and how we are all preparing for that abrupt waking and the calling and the moment we have to say yes, except it will not come so grandly, so biblically, but more subtly and intimately in the face of one you know you have to love. So that when we finally step out of the boat toward them, we find everything holds us, and everything confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't. Because finally, after all this struggle and all these years, you don't want to anymore. You've simply had enough of drowning. And you want to live, and you want to love, and you will cross any territory and any darkness, however fluid and however dangerous, to take the one hand you know belongs in yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shugart, that his message this morning was perfectly aligned with what we continue to share and talk with each of you about our mission and our purpose, and truly to support our students. So thank you again for sharing your thoughts with us. They were excellent. Before we close, I have a couple just minor things to share with you. Is anyone planning on attending the solar eclipse viewing that we'll be holding on our campus next Monday? If so, it will begin at 11:45 and end at 2:45, and the eclipse starts at 11:53 and ends at 2:43, with the maximum eclipse occurring at 1:19, when the sun appears as a very thin crescent. Our amazing Natural Sciences Department, led by Noella DeCruz and Art Maurer, have organized this event, and they will have viewers available as well in case of clouds or rain, or in case the event would move inside. Finally, I would like to say thank you to all of the individuals that helped me pull today's event together. Kelly Roeder and her team, the Jeffs and Hank from Media Services. Hank did a phenomenal job putting together the PowerPoint this morning. To the facilities team who pulled all this together. We have seats set up. We've rented out this space for tomorrow afternoon for, I think, potentially 1,200 people. So for the facilities person, for the food service staff that, again, helped prepare the breakfast this morning, you guys are all amazing. And know from the bottom of my heart, from every person in this room, No matter what you do on campus, you make a difference in our students' lives. You make a difference in student success. And I will carry this same message out through our evening people who are unable to be here through the day. We will have their own special general session for them, something new this year that will occur at 9 o'clock at night. So for any of you that have staff that are interested, we'll be working to pull that together. But again, I thank you so much for everything that you've done, the great work we've accomplished. I look forward to an exciting and successful semester, and I will see you all in the hallways. Thank you. If anyone would like to have a question or talk with Dr. Shugart, he will be up at the podium for a short time.